Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and a warm welcome to today's webinar, which is brought to you by Shared Services Link in association with PRGX. Today, we're looking at the much needed collaboration that is required between finance and procurement, and how it is still missing and still lacking in many organisations today. So I mentioned my name is Susie West. I'm the founder and CEO at Shared Services Link, and I'm delighted to be introducing as my panelists today, Jim Albrecht, who's the VP Contract Compliance at PRGX, and Ben Garner, who is VP Corporate Controller at Lovesac. So great to have Jim and Ben with us today. Make sure that you use the time to get your questions answered, and post those questions through to me, and we'll be pitching those questions to Jim and Ben in the last few minutes of this webinar. So let's just start talking about context here. The penny dropped about 25 years ago, and how did it drop? What happened? It was a bit of an aha moment within finance and procurement, and it was really driven by the onset of accounts payable automation and e-procurement technology. What happened when these projects kind of came into being is that these projects shone a really bright light on business process, and in particular, three things, in my opinion, were highlighted. Number one, just how broken these processes were. Number two, just how these processes absolutely needed to be handled end to end, because actually these processes kind of crossed an organization rather than we're just sitting in part of an organization, and a lot of dependency of how well that process was running. It's highly dependent on another part of the business, so it had to be handled end to end. And number three, just how stuck organizations were within their silos, within their towers. So what we were looking at was really an awakening within the business world, within finance and procurement. And I kind of liken it to tectonic plates all of a sudden had to be somehow deconstructed and redesigned. We had to stop looking at finance and procurement as separate entities and separate silos, separate towers, and start looking across the organization and start looking at end-to-end transaction processing. So this is when people started thinking about and talking about end-to-end processing. It meant that finance and procurement could no longer operate in the way that they were operating. Something had to happen, and it had to be significant change. And this significant change has happened, but it has taken, for many companies, it's taken over 2 decades to kind of start to move towards a tighter collaboration. It had to happen, otherwise the following was going to be realized. Costs would remain high. We're talking $60 to $100 to process an invoice. Visibility of spend wouldn't exist, or could not exist, if companies continued to operate it in a silo fashion. Spend management wouldn't exist. CPOs, CFOs wouldn't know about that spend that had been committed until 30, 60 days after the spend had been committed, and you just can't operate like that. Process compliancy wouldn't be in place. There'd be a lack of purchase order compliancy, a lack of goods receipt note compliancy. It wouldn't be prioritized. Automation can't happen if you're highly siloed. You can't get it off the ground. There's no business case for it. You have to be end to end if you really want to optimize the business case. Low productivity, kind of focusing on the finance side, maybe 4,000 invoices per FTE instead of 60,000 invoices per FTE. And productivity is so important these days. It's such a key chief KPI. You can't be operating in a world where your productivity is 4,000 invoices per year per FTE. It just doesn't make sense. There'll just be a sense of dissatisfaction amongst all of your users, internal business unit customers, internal customers, suppliers. There'll just be this kind of furious levels of dissatisfaction, because invoices wouldn't be paid on time, would be lost. Fraud will only be enabled in a siloed environment where finance and procurement aren't working together and the towers are still very much in place. And really importantly is we are becoming very familiar with now the importance of data. Data in a siloed environment would just be allowed to decay, and you wouldn't be able to optimize it at all. So what needed to happen? Finance and procurement have needed to, really, in the last 20 to 25 years, they've had to embrace this significant change. And as I've mentioned, it's taken a lot of companies quite some time to make these strides forward. And this, you can call this significant change, effective collaboration. Finance and procurement have to work together in effective collaboration on a permanent, ongoing, sustainable basis in order to realize a vision for the company and a vision for finance and procurement, a vision for shared services. So in 2024, where are we? So in 2024, really 25 years after a lot of the P2P automations came into play but was focused more on AP automation and e-procurement technology, but now it's more end-to-end technology. That collaboration is still missing or lacking in many organizations. So we're going to be digging a little bit deeper into the degree to how it's missing, or what degree it is missing, what effective collaboration looks like, and some of the steps to take you there. So this is a great visual from PRGX. During this webinar, I'm going to be leaning a lot on a report which we would love to share with you directly after this webinar, which PRGX ran in the last few months, and they interviewed and surveyed many procurement leaders, finance leaders, CPOs, CFOs, and I'm going to be leaning on a lot of the data points that have come out of that report. This is a PRGX visual, and what it does is it really illustrates the end-to-end-ness of the purchase to pay or source to pay process. So what we've got here are 6 core activities, steps, if you will. But within there, each of those steps, you've got kind of smaller kind of sub-tasks, sub-activities. At the end of the day, you can look at a source to pay transaction, and there would be 25, 30, 35 steps in that single transaction. Given that most enterprise organizations, $1 billion plus, or large mid-sized companies are looking to get to touchless processing, then we need to be in a position where we do a few things. Number one, we streamline our end-to-end process as much as possible. So we eliminate as many of those 25, 30 steps as we possibly can, reduce it down to maybe 16. We standardize, number 2, which means we have one way of doing something and everything else is not the right way. We convert the not the right way ways of doing something over to the right one way of doing something. That's your standardization practices, and this is where you want your 90–95% of your transactions that are flowing through your source to pay process to be following your one standardized approved way of processing a source to pay transaction. And number 3, you want to move to automation as much as you possibly can, and this is where you really start moving into new heights and really hitting the ceiling, if there is a ceiling, of what is possible. But most shared service organizations are just not there yet, and they're not in a position where they can really start optimizing all these exciting technologies that are out there. So in order to really be a high performer in your streamlining, in your standardization, in your automation, the place that you have to start, it has to be with the collaboration of finance and procurement. So this is what we're going to be digging into. But just before that, I've got my first poll question. So coming up on the screen now, let's find out just how aligned you are in your finance and procurement organization today. So please tick the box most appropriate to your situation. How aligned is finance and procurement within your organization? Extremely well aligned from the C-suite throughout the organization. not bad, but we have work to do. Or the third option, we started to realise the problem and people are rallying, or it's bad. So please let us know, and we'll be closing the poll shortly. We are on about 63% of you responding, so thank you for that. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at the results coming up on your screen now. A bell curve. 6% of you are saying that there's really good alignment from the C-suite right the way through the organisation. Just shy of 50% of you saying it's not bad, but work to do. 34% you realise there's a problem. People are rallying. That's great. That people are rallying, and 11% of you are saying it's bad. I'm hoping that this webinar is going to help you all. And even those that are saying it's extremely aligned, I'm grateful that you're here. Thank you for joining, and I'm sure there are going to be some takeaways for you on this webinar. So let's start diving into some of the takeaways from this report and a little bit more about what you're getting today. There'll be some insights that we share with you. We'll be talking about some long-term benefits of source-to-pay alignment, some priorities from the CFO, CPO, some actions that will damage your source-to-pay outcomes, and conclude with some traits that are shared by best-in-class source-to-pay functions, and then an invitation, of course, to read the full report. So starting off with some of the insights. Let's start with the first of 5 key insights that came out of this report, revolutionizing finance and procurement strategies, shaping the future in 2024. The first interesting one out of the 5 was that senior business leaders, so your CPO and CFO essentially, are optimistic about source-to-pay alignment, but they're actually more optimistic than operational people within the finance and procurement functions. So when asked, 1 in 4 CPO CFOs were very positive about the level of alignment within finance and procurement, but when asked, only 1 in 8 of finance and procurement ops individuals, senior, middle management, only 1 in 8 felt positive about the level of alignment within finance and procurement. What does this tell us? It tells us that there's a bit of a perception imbalance within organizations. CPOs, CFOs think there is alignment within the organization when perhaps there isn't. So a re-education and a bit of a bringing up to speed potentially needs to happen if you think this is the case in your organization. Second key insight from the PRGX report is that the CFOs and CPOs must be responsible for bringing source-to-pay professionals closer together. So this is a kind of a methodology. How do you go about bringing finance and procurement together? Is it from the top down, or do inspirational finance and procurement people that are visionary and inspired and can see what needs to happen come together and take a case to the CPO and the CFO? It possibly will be the latter. So we're depending on senior and inspired ops individuals to go and form a case and take it to the CPOs and the CFOs, but you need to have their blessing, their support, their mandate in order for the model that's going to take this forward to really have a strong grip and take hold. So 53% of finance and procurement professionals say that their CFOs and CPOs, they work together collaboratively. So there is a collaboration, but their actions do not necessarily bring the procurement and finance teams together. So again, there's this joining up that needs to happen, and an education of what a joined up finance and procurement collaboration actually looks like and how it needs to work. The third insight was that source-to-pay data is being underutilized. We are going to spend a little bit of time on this later on because it obviously is a massive subject for many of you, but only 7% of finance and procurement professionals say their ability to leverage source-to-pay data is excellent. So The other 93 are somewhere between, oh, it's bad, or yeah, it's pretty good. But only 7%, we're only in the single digits here, are saying that their ability to leverage source to pay data is excellent. So huge opportunity for growth there. Let's move on to number 4. There's an opportunity to elevate procurement strategic capabilities. So when asked, 100% of finance professionals said that they believe that their function was viewed as a trusted advisor. So huge confidence there in their ability to help the business. When asked, only 66% of procurement professionals said that they thought that they were being seen as a trusted advisor. So this is an interesting takeaway. The 5th insight was the adoption of artificial intelligence must accelerate. Only 10% of source to pay professionals say their organization has already invested in AI or machine learning technologies. The technologies are out there, the technologies are ready. So they're out there, they're ready to be deployed, they are being deployed. So they're pioneering organizations, that they're pathfinders, and they have road tested these technologies and they are ready for wider adoption. So now is the time to adopt, unless you want to be a laggard and see your competition race ahead. So now is the time to embrace these technologies, artificial intelligence technologies generally. You need to have the budget. If you don't have the budget, this webinar is going to help you figure out how to get the budget. Leadership is now becoming more and more educated on artificial intelligence. So there again, it's like an awakening that's happening. Let's talk about long-term benefits of source to pay alignment, and then I want to bring in Ben and Jim to have a bit more of a discussion. So how aligned are finance and procurement functions? Again, we touched on this a little bit on the insight. So I'm just having you zero in really on the ring on the lower right-hand part of this chart. You can see that we asked 3 groups what the level of alignment was, and the finance group, represented here in purple, 7% of the finance group said that there was alignment between finance and procurement. If we go to turquoise, 20% of the procurement respondents said there was alignment. So you could say, you know, the 7%, that's not that encouraging, right? Clearly a lot of work needs to be done there. 20%, again, really not that encouraging. It was the biggest group that said there was the most alignment within finance and procurement, or between finance and procurement, actually came from the C-suite. So just coming back to that earlier insight that we shared with you, there just needs to be an understanding of what does alignment actually look like to you, Mr. and Mrs. CFO and CPO, because we're not aligned and we need to move to a situation where we are aligned, because these are the kind of results that we can get if we're working collaboratively together. Some of the testimonials that were coming up from the report, you can see here, one individual was saying, traditionally procurement and finance just are not speaking the same language. So how can we get these individuals on the same page? So now I'd like to introduce you to Jim and to Ben. And first of all, Jim, Ben, maybe you could just tell us a little bit about yourselves, and then we'll kick off with some questions. Jim, let's start with you, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Susie. I appreciate that. So I'm Jim Albrecht. I'm a VP of Audit Operations for Contract Compliance with PRGX, and I lead the PRGX business, guiding a really diverse global team spread across 5 continents that really conducts world-class contract compliance reviews. I started my career in various finance roles within manufacturing and equipment rental industries, and from there I've carved a niche in recovery audit, dedicating the past 15 years to contract compliance. I've worked with clients around the globe in various sectors, including retail, pharma, telecom, automotive, and technology.
Great, thank you. How about you, Ben? Nice to have you with us.
Thank you, great to be here. Ben Garner, Corporate Controller at Lovesac. Started my career in Big Four accounting with Ernst & Young, Spent a short stint in banking, and for the last 12 years, pretty much exclusively been in the retail sector. It's been mostly brick and mortar. At Lovesac, it's a little more DTC and online. But happy to be here.
Great to have you with us. So Ben, let's start out with you. So we're recognizing a bit like a finance and procurement community, we're recognizing that we still need some work to break down these silos between finance and procurement. So from your experience, what would you say are the most effective strategies for fostering a culture of collaboration?
Well, there's really one that comes to mind, top of mind here, and it's really the communication coming from the top, right? Leadership needs to communicate clearly the expectations when it comes to collaboration, and then they have to reinforce that communication. And that could be in meetings, it could be in a company newsletter, whatever that channel of communication looks like. And then finally, they need to follow up that communication by modeling by example.
Okay, great. Jim, let's move on to you. What would you say are the common behaviours that you've identified that typically undermine the efficiency of a source to pay process, and how can these behaviours be addressed?
Well, really, Susie, three things come to mind. First of all, I would say vendor portals that are really inflexible. So sometimes we see that suppliers are not even allowed to submit their billings properly. There could be wrong rate tables loaded, so billings cannot be entered the way they really should be. So you're missing that kind of visibility to what's being provided. Billing type options can be limited, so that detailed information is lost, and sometimes preloaded materials or services are insufficient, and that really causes exceptions. So you're not really getting the visibility that you really want from where you're asking the supplier to enter the invoices into the portal. You're losing some of that visibility that you would have had otherwise. Second one I would say is that agreements are written in ways sometimes where finance systems cannot really effectively manage the terms and conditions that are incorporated into the agreement, which really leads to number three, and that is, I would say, the supplier-child relationships within the vendor master really need to be established. And we see clients struggle with quantifying global supplier spend, and this can lead to multiple payment terms for a supplier, for example, or even duplicate payments. And I'd say a related challenge to that is multiple ERPs across geographies, which again, often lack visibility into spend performance. So using AI and a common data model, we can help clients bring all these systems into one common platform for analysis and performance testing.
Great. Jim, I want to stay with you because I'd like to dig in a little bit into what ways finance and procurement teams can collaborate to not only optimize cost, but also drive that innovation and the value that everyone's so keen to be driving in their organizations.
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say what's really important is that health checks are performed on the relationships, especially with your strategic suppliers. So really understanding the relationship and how they're working with you. I would say where there might be, consider where there might be gaps between what was intended as a result of an RFP or a contracting process and where things really are today. I think an example of that might be looking back at the pandemic, right? You walked into the pandemic with certain expectations of your suppliers, and then everything sort of changed, right, all at once. And so now you started asking them to do things that maybe you'd never thought you would ask them to do, and maybe your contract doesn't really cover that as well. So I think that's just one, I think maybe more of an extreme example, but you can see how that kind of thing can happen on a regular basis. And I think also, working collaboratively between procurement and finance to communicate expectations to the supplier base in terms of what is expected in terms of billing and so forth. And then when issues are identified, jointly planning a source to pay course of action to improve behaviors of all parties involved. And I think really, think about asking certain questions like, what caused the issues? How best can improvements be made? Is there a technology solution maybe that can help here? What KPIs could maybe be put into action to monitor performance? Does the solution involve operations, or maybe does it even involve your suppliers? So something as simple and straightforward as the definition of cost is something we run into on a cost-based supplier contract can have major implications. So what does cost include? What does it not include? Is it actual cost? Is it estimated cost? Are indirect costs allowed, or just direct costs? And how might related parties impact cost? How might related parties actually impact how cost is defined? So Great. Full source to pay inclusion and alignment on solution is really powerful, and that really can help you achieve your objectives. And I think just looking into the future, looking at AI and machine learning to improve visibility into existing data sources, that'll really help identify any gaps in the existing data. And then also, it's really critical to effective decision making. So, what can be done to capture the information needed? What is the source? Where does it reside? How can it be harnessed? Those are all questions to look at so that you can really utilize AI the way it's intended.
Yep. Okay. And of course, that's going to really help open up the doors to generate further value across the organization. Ben, let's come to you. It'd be great if you could outline maybe some top practices that you recommend for strengthening the finance and procurement partnership and helping with sustainable success.
Absolutely. Two things really come to mind here. It really starts with the reporting structure. Our procurement and finance, both under the CFO umbrella, if they are, I've really seen that be a beneficial strategy as it encourages collaboration through the team meetings. If they're not, that can almost be a barrier to collaboration, right? You don't think about it. So something to consider when looking at that reporting structure. And then that kind of leads in whether they are or aren't. It's really regularly scheduled communications. If you're not communicating, you're not collaborating. So these could be monthly, but at minimally, quarterly within some kind of a reporting period. And what I've seen is as these meetings occur more frequently, relationships are established. That camaraderie is built, and over time, people quit waiting for the meetings to start communicating and collaborating, and it comes naturally, and they start doing that on the front end.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I'd like to also understand, with your experience working, Ben, with PRGX, where have you found PRGX to be most helpful in supporting you improve that internal alignment? Maybe you've got some examples of that.
Yes, really the first thing that comes to mind is that they've been most helpful in aligning procurement, merchandising, finance to the expected behavior of the supplier or vendor, right? I've experienced times where suppliers weren't abiding by a vendor handbook or, a contract that they'd previously agreed to, which resulted in compliance fines or kind of abrasion in that relationship. And PRGX really helped communicate just the best practices and to the various internal departments so that we could be on the same page with the communications to our suppliers. We like to partner with our suppliers, but we also expect, compliance with our contracts. And PRGX just really helped align everyone to those expectations.
Great. Jim, let's just close with you. So, in your contract compliance work, you're not just looking back into the past. It's not just a kind of a rear view mirror assessment. It's a headlight kind of quality as well. What role does your team play in improving the source to pay process moving forward?
Yeah, again, that's a good question. I'd say that the real value realized through contract compliance audits is how various areas of leakage are identified, and then digging into those root causes to course correct and completely avoid those going forward, those kind of errors in the future. The corrective action plan may include something as simple as alignment with the suppliers on the original intent, but it could also involve operational adjustments. It could be changes to the actual contract, or even capturing types of spend that were not envisioned when the original agreement was executed, similar to what I was just referring to with the COVID example. But I would say these adjustments to the source to pay process are designed to avoid future leakage and help really lock in those future savings. And just one real quick example, we had a situation where there was a tremendous misalignment between our Fortune 100 client and their supplier, who was contracted to decommission and dispose of fleet vehicles. And the error rates we identified were really significant. But through the process, the two sides came to a mutual understanding of how best to operate going forward. And then we had a subsequent review and found 0 errors. So it's really gratifying on our part to see the two parties that want to work together really work things out and make these types of improvements over time.
Great example there. Thanks, Jim. So let's spend a moment on what we've obviously had some great insights there. So more needs to be done to close the gap. So some great takeaways there from Ben and from Jim. And it's getting that ear, as Ben was saying, of the senior leadership team. So how do you do that? So is it a case of somebody in finance, if you're watching this and you're in finance and you know that there's a problem, have you identified the person in procurement that you need to buddy up with? Because really, if you can go together and put a case together to your CFO, CPO, ideally both of them, to communicate how collaboration needs to work and what alignment needs to look like, then that's great. So that's your kind of your first step, is to find that individual that is inspired, is excited, has the energy, has the focus, has the vision, has the drive, and will be your buddy to go and drive this forward. Ideally, they've got influence, they're relatively senior, but you in finance or you in procurement, you have to find your opposite number that gets it, and gets that the kind of fact that in order to solve the purchase to pay, source to pay problem, there needs to be a collaboration, cross-functional collaboration at play. So let's just spend a moment on some of the practical things that can be done here. So it's winning the ear of the executive team. How do you get in front of them? First of all, you need to be diagnostic. You need to understand their key goals. And I think this brings us back to the misalignment between the C-suite and how aligned finance and procurement are, and how actual people within the function of finance and procurement are seeing the alignment. There's a misalignment there. So first of all, take a step back. What are the key goals of your exec team? Where are they going? What are the requirements? What does life look like for them, ideally in 12 months' time? And what's the journey that's going to take them there look like? So understand what's key to them, and then use their language to then sell them the idea of how an aligned finance and procurement team is going to help them deliver their goals. So this is a sales technique. So it starts off with the diagnostics. Tell me all about your goals and your key challenges right now, your key requirements, and then take that language away, take all of that information away, and finance and procurement together can put together the beginnings of a plan that can then be presented back to the exec team on what a collaborative finance and procurement team looks like, and how it will help the organization meet their goals. And what you need the exec team to do to help you make this a permanent and sustainable arrangement. Second point I would say as well is making sure as much as possible that your source to pay team has authority. Keyword here is authority. So the exec team needs to be so supportive of your plan that it gives you so much credibility and so much authority. And it is a part now of the organization. It's a collaboration, it's a partnership, it's a team, whatever it ends up looking like. But it has the credibility within your organization, and it has the mandate to go and drive significant change. It might be that what comes out of all of this, that your source to pay collaboration turns into a global process ownership. And I'm stressing that because we're going to talk about that more. But whatever it is, it's connected into your PMO, your project management organization. It's connected into operations. It's connected into the shared services center. If your operations is the shared services center, shared services organization, it's connected into IT, the functions, the executive leadership team. So it's this hub that's spoked out, and it has relations, partnerships with all these influential parts of the organizations that are there to kind of be the engine to drive change. This team has full remit, right? This is what you want. You want this team to have full remit, full understanding of the end-to-end process. So to be able to, tooled up and able to identify root causes, key issues, identify where the key wins are, be able to prioritize those projects. So, and be given the budget so that they can actually invest in solutions moving forward. Ideally, the team that you end up having that represents source to pay, they aren't focusing on the ops. They're not bogged down with operational day-to-day dealing with POs, processing invoices. They are actually empowered to focus on what source to pay looks like for tomorrow. So this is a pretty fundamental part of what a critical success factor for a global process owner. We touched on budget. It goes without saying that budget is needed, and the link in with HR is key, because at the end of the day, if you want finance and procurement to be on the same page, there has to be this commonality in KPIs, has to be the commonality in bonuses. So HR needs to be involved. But also, if there are people out in the organisation that are undermining your source to pay policies, they're continuously not raising POs in the way that they should be raised. What is the consequence of that, and how does HR need to be involved so that this can be a company-wide operation at play and that you are supported right across the organisation? So moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit about global process ownership. And global process ownership started appearing within GBS and shared services around 2010. By 2015, it was much more commonplace. 50% of shared service organisations had GPOs within their teams, either kind of dotted in or actually within the teams themselves. GPOs were recruited to absolutely focus on the process of tomorrow, so the source to pay process of tomorrow. The problem was that half the time these GPOs were actually heads of AP. They were expected to run ops by day and focus on tomorrow and improvement by night. It just couldn't happen. So it was always deprioritized because ops is always the firefighting, and that's always going to take your first kind of bit of attention. When we used to ask GPOs, to what degree are you given budget? Are you given authority? Do you have the executive support? Are you involved in making decisions on technologies that affect your process? They would say, we're not given enough budget, we're not given enough authority, we're not the last ones to make the decisions on technologies that affect our process. So only a limited number of GPOs would say, yeah, I've got my budget, I've got authority, I've got total executive support, and I am the last one to make the decisions on technologies that affect my process. So these are some of the best practices that you want to have in place within a global process owner environment. I would also just stress, even if you don't have a GPO environment, the best practices that I'm talking about here absolutely, without doubt, should and could be applied to your source to pay team and organization. So if you wanted to have make sure that the GPO model works, then what you needed was really to be on the same pay grade or seniority as shared services directors. I remember speaking with GPOs who were just having this breakthrough moment because all of a sudden they were C-suite -2, and it was amazing for them because now they realized that they could stand toe to toe with the bigger personalities in the company that were saying, not interested in your policies, not interested in following the source to pay process, just it's not a priority for me. Now these individuals, they had the seniority and the authority to say, you know what, that's not going to work for us. It's not going to work for finance, it's not going to work for procurement, it's not going to work for the organization, and actually ultimately it's not going to work for you. So you need to come on board. The whole ecosystem needs to be in place. And again, even if you don't have a global process ownership set up, your source to pay team needs this support. So it needs to have representation of on-the-ground team members, project managers, ideally, and certainly in enterprise organizations. I'm hearing of global process owners who have 4, 6 dedicated project managers. They don't even have to go to the PMO, because guess what? They've got 26 source to pay projects in flight. They need their own project or program managers, and they are completely dedicated to that GPO. You've got your own IT resource, fantastic. Or if you don't have your IT resource, you've got a quick route into IT, and they will prioritize your needs so that your needs can be kind of implemented immediately. And to keep your GPO away from ops as much as possible, so they're not trying to do today's work and focus on tomorrow, and to give them budget. It takes money, it takes investment of time and resource to do what we're wanting to do here, which is to streamline, standardize, and automate, because the end goal is to get to touchless. And nearly every organisation, finance, procurement, shared service organisation that I'm talking to, the end state that they're after is to get to touchless. So I just, sorry, the slight formatting problem on this page, which I apologise for, but I think you get the picture. We've got some of the takeaways from this report. A finance individual was saying, going back to the PRGX report, that the benefits of alignment would be higher gross margin produced by cost savings. It's always good to have the organisation aligned. Procurement saying 3 times, this individual repeated, more savings and budget certainty, more savings and budget certainty. The C-suite's talking about there would be less surprise expenses if we had better alignment. In the past, there have been contracts signed without approval from finance, and that's caused issues with financial planning. So let's move on and spend a moment on CFO and CPO priorities. But just before we do that, let's go to our next poll question coming up on the screen now. What would you say are your top priorities for the next 12 months? And please tick all that apply. Unlocking savings, increasing productivity, or recovering more profits. What would you say are your top priorities for the next 12 months? Unlocking savings, increasing productivity, or recovering more profit. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at the results coming up on your screen now. So 71% of you are saying increasing productivity, followed by 45% unlocking savings, and 29% of you talking about recovering more profit. So thank you for sharing that with us. So let's have a look at what the report shared with us in regards to that similar question. And we can see here that finance and procurement, so finance in purple, procurement in green, they were on the same page actually as far as wanting to unlock savings. And it was the C-suite that actually mentioned that unlocking savings only really came in at 22% for them. It wasn't really much. It wasn't a priority number one. The C-suite priority number one, represented in blue here, was increasing productivity, with 41% of them saying that was their main goal. So again, just trying to get on that page, that same page. So 3 pervasive actions that can damage a source to pay outcome. Let's just talk about this for a moment, and then we're going to go back to Jim and Ben. So number 1, if you're operating in silos instead of a partnership, this is some of the kind of the rot that comes as a result of operating like that. You're not going to be sharing data. You're not going to have a shared vision. KPIs are going to be taking off in different directions. You're not going to have an agreement on what's a priority. You're not going to agree on what your key requirements are for technology. And if there is any kind of a partnership, kind of alignment, or a kind of a thought of alignment within what essentially is a siloed operation, that kind of alignment isn't kind of trickling all the way down through the organization. It has to be right the way through the organization, that collaboration. Let's have a look at the second one, which is you're going to be training in technology. So there's going to be no time to invest in the technology that you need that's going to enable all these exciting outcomes, because you're too involved in ops. Because you can't be operating in an optimal way if finance and procurement aren't working collaboratively. It's just not possible. It's such a massive roadblock that you're putting in front of yourself. And it's a roadblock that's just making life incredibly challenging when it doesn't need to. You're not going to be set up in a smart way to plug into the PMO or IT because you're not visible enough, and you're not being given a voice. You don't have a platform, so you're going to be trailing. You're going to be the laggards when it comes to technology. Data is so badly managed. There is no way that you're going to be able to optimize it if you're operating in silos. The third one that we have here is just that kind of missing leadership and lacking of supportive leadership and culture. that's required. So you do need to, as Ben was talking about, you need the ear of the execs. This needs to be led by the execs, and the exec team needs to understand and recognize the power of an aligned and well-supported source-to-pay organization. And that supported organization means you've got the authority, you've got the budget, you've got the time to focus on tomorrow, you've got the links into IT, into the PMO, and into HR. So let's just talk about data for a moment. We, in this report, PRGX wanted to find out to what degree siloed data was hindering growth. 53% of finance and procurement professionals said that their CFOs who worked collaboratively together didn't necessarily work on bringing the source to pay teams together and the data together. So again, the senior organizations, the senior execs who believed that there was alignment, and their perception was that there was alignment within finance and procurement. There wasn't this alignment at the deeper level within the organization where there needed to be this alignment within the data and the usage and the management of data. So I'd like to now do one more poll before we go back to Jim and Ben. So let's ask this question. How would you describe your organization's overall ability to leverage source to pay data today? Would you say excellent, good, adequate, or poor? How would you describe your organization's overall ability to leverage source to pay data today? And closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Let's have a look at the results there coming up on your screen. We can see 2% of you think it's excellent, 14% good, the majority adequate or poor. So thank you for sharing those results with us. And now let's go back to Jim and to Ben. So Ben, let's start with you here, please. I'd love to explore data a bit more with you. In your view, what would you say are the most critical types of data within source to pay processes that organizations typically underutilize, and how can they better leverage this data to optimize their operations and decision makings, do you think?
Yeah, from an accounting and finance lens here, two things really come to mind. The first being your vendor terms, and within that terms, are there discounts? If you're doing, $1 billion in purchases a year, have you done the analysis to see what shortening those terms and getting, a 2% or a 1% discount is? That's $20 million on a 2% discount there. It's unlikely you're, earning that, repurposing the cash, or hanging on to it for another 15 or 20 days. Do you even know the average terms per vendor? Do you have a policy around discounts? Who's involved in that decision making? If you don't, these are some things to consider. And really, the second piece of data that I think is really underutilized is compliance data. Do you have a vendor compliance policy? Are you auditing compliance? Is there an opportunity for you to offset leakage caused by non-compliance, right? Are you able to even quantify that leakage? And that's where I've had the most success with PRGX in the past, is that can be done, internally if you have a team, or externally through a partnership with a firm like PRGX to help you really quantify what that leakage is and recover some as a company.
That's really useful. Great examples there. Jim, can you talk to us a little bit about advanced analytics, data intelligence solutions, how AI transforms source to pay data into actionable insights? I think this is a kind of front of mind question for a lot of viewers.
Yeah.
Maybe provide examples of how this has driven success in a client organization that you might be working with.
Yeah, I have a couple of examples of that, Susie. So first of all, what we would call maybe spend, share, change. So we are working with a growing company and found that specific spend categories were growing faster than total spend. So we identified a 2.5% increase in share, or a 15% increase in that single category. And using our AI data intelligence solution, Spend Insights allows us allows for this visibility along with drill down capability to lower levels of the lower levels of taxonomy or supplier views within the impacted category to verify that those charges are actually valid and they're coded properly and that they're what you were expecting. The second example is really early payment analysis. So it's sort of the opposite side of what Ben was just talking about. But our client reviewed all payments paid early and found there were several suppliers that had early payments and late payments that offset. However, in one case, our payment insights capability flagged where system terms were set up incorrectly versus how the supplier was actually invoicing. And for a single product line, so just a minority of the transactions, but a single product line that was about 14% of the invoices were being paid early. And this correction had a working capital impact of almost $250,000. So it's pretty significant.
Yeah, great examples, thanks. Ben, let's go to you first on overcoming some data challenges. What are the common challenges that organizations face in collecting, integrating, analyzing source-to-pay data across different systems, different departments? What strategies have proven effective in overcoming these obstacles, would you say?
Yeah, it's exactly what you said in the question, right? There's different systems, different departments. One department may be using a SQL report, somebody else is using a different, BI tool layered on top, and no one's using one source of truth. That's honestly the best strategy that I've seen. It's not rocket science here. You really need one source of truth. There's many software solutions that identify that, but everyone in the company's got to be using the same data resource or tool, so the different departments have, and the different departments can then dedicate resources for that data analysis, everybody working from the same thing. The leakage, I've seen statistics as high as 3 to 4% from an inefficient source to pay process alone. That would indicate the need to invest in some kind of a solution.
Yeah, okay, great. Jim, what are your views on that?
Yeah, I guess my observation is that I think I find it interesting in the survey that the C-suite generally sees they are effectively using data a little more than the rest of the source to pay organization. To me, it says that there's a real opportunity to highlight areas where data is informing decision making, so where it is being used properly, but then also where is it lacking. Data is really the beating heart of business health. So I see 3 areas where improvements can be made. The first one I would say is existing data sources can be leveraged more effectively. Again, like Ben was just saying, using dashboards, having a single source of truth, that's really, really critical. The other thing is with multiple ERPs, they create silos of data due to mergers and acquisition activity, various ops regions around the globe, or just autonomous business units that exist. And then systems really need to be more robust to accurately reflect the complexity of supplier agreements. So those are areas I think really can be brought together more. And data sources, I think, using the power of AI to improve the visibility and spot early signs of coming trends is really important. And then also create a more collaborative environment for procurement and finance, the whole source to pay process to work together.
Yeah, great. So single source of truth is what we're going for, and some kind of closed loop setup is vital. Let's ask a couple more questions. Jim, I'll come back to you. What would you say the key learnings that you try to educate your clients on to help them unlock?
There's so much to learn, but to boil it down maybe to two learnings. I think understanding the data you have and the data that resides elsewhere is really, really critical. So maybe ask yourself, do you have access to sufficient information to adequately inform your decision making? What limitations are there and what can you do about it? Shedding light on the gaps in the source to pay process is really a key learning for our clients. And secondly, I would say there's a law of unintended consequences. Poorly written contracts can be extremely problematic, and when too much is left undefined or assumed, problems will result. We've encountered situations where it's just a very simple thing. So we're using the word and instead of the word or in an agreement cost our client millions. I know it's hard to believe, but it actually happened. And this is easily corrected, so the issue is now gone away, but understanding how agreements are being operationalized is really critical to unlocking that value.
Yeah, great. Ben, let's conclude with you. You've obviously been a customer with PRGX for a while. How have they helped you dig deeper into your source to pay data?
They provide meaningful industry benchmarking and really help us align with best practices. at various times throughout the engagements, we meet to understand what they're seeing, you know, especially compared to industry. Are we seeing significantly higher, you know, overshorts, compliance charges, things like that than what they would expect or what they typically see? If so, let's take a deeper dive into our internal procedures. What are we doing? Where can we better align our internal procedures to get our metrics more aligned with expected outcomes?
Great. Jim, Ben, thanks so much. Let's move on to the last part of this this webinar, which is focusing on really the critical success factors. So in order to bring finance and procurement together, we can kind of boil it down really to 4 key areas. So collaboration on joint initiatives. This is absolutely essential, as I think we've emphasized throughout the last 50 odd minutes. And if you want to see growth, and if you want to see your vision realized within finance and procurement across the GBS and for the overall organization, and you want to be moving to things like touchless, you want to be moving to value add, then it needs to start with a collaboration within finance and procurement. Moving right, prioritizing and strengthening relationships. So this is winning the ear of the C-suite, understanding that in order to move this machine forward, you need to be working with your PMO, you need to be working with IT, HR, you need to be working with the function, the GBS. So it's a multi-stakeholder operation that's at play here. And of course, your suppliers have a key role to play here, and this is part of your overall game plan as well. Leveraging technologies, generally just getting your head around the fact that if you want to move to touchless, then the technology has a massive role to play. So you do need to be equipped with budget. Streamlining and standardizing your process obviously comes as a kind of part 1 and part 2. There's an awful lot of standardization that can automation that can be done on only 50% standardization. Also remember that automation can help your standardization journey. So technology has a huge role to play in advancing your finance, your source to pay process, and your end-to-end process. And of course, AI technologies, artificial intelligence technologies, and machine learning technologies are going to be taking your source to pay process into a whole different league. And to really mirror what Jim was saying there about data, that data is the beating heart of your source to pay organization. So making sure that there's real clarity on how data is managed, data is updated, data is stored, data is owned, what are the policies around data, what are the access policies around data, just making sure that all of the governance around that is really part of the source to pay strategy. So if you would like to have a follow-up with PRGX, we invite you to do so. So maybe you're interested to have a call with PRGX or have a demo with them to find out more about how they can help you. So if you would like to take up the offer, please go ahead and tick the box here. So just keep that open for a moment, and then we'll conclude with a bit of details about an upcoming event that PRGX has, and then we'll move to possibly one question, because we are running out of time, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll be sharing the report with you directly after this webinar. And of course, if you want to meet the PRGX team and their clients, there's an event taking place in Las Vegas in September 22nd to 24th. So look out for information on that. Okay, let's take a moment for one question, and then we'll need to wrap this up. So one question for you, Ben. It sounds like you've been at some large retailers. Now that you're at Lovesac, what is the different state of maturity in your source to pay process? You've seen the differences between large versus small retailers.
Yeah, it's slightly more manual in a smaller environment. Time of existence of the company, processes are currently being built and refined, where some of the larger, national retailers have had long-standing established processes. What's exciting about Lovesac is there's been a lot of people recently that have come on board from much larger national players, and are bringing what worked well and kind of avoiding what didn't and what was kind of stuck in the routine practice. So, the benefit to the smaller company is it's easier to be more nimble and uh, make change, and the smaller changes can have much more significant impacts.
Great. Okay. We are unfortunately out of time. There's a lot of content to go through there. But to Ben and Jim, thanks so much for your time. It's been a pleasure speaking with you today, all of our listeners, and we look forward to welcoming you next time. Thanks so much and goodbye.
Bye.